Yo, 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 what is going on, IK Familia? It is your boy BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder. Man, we are, finally back. It has been a few days, a little bit of hiatus, man. There's been a lot going on in 79, and gonna be kind of giving an update video. Again, I know we haven't given one for a little bit, and so I thought it was only right and fitting to try and get this overview back in play. For those that are wondering, hopefully the next videos are actually going to be covering our best of kind of top players, top servers, top troop power, honor. And we're also going to be looking at some new areas kind of in our top data set lists, looking at servers, arguably kind of up to 60, up to S70, depending on how high we go. So look out for those on the come up. As always, make sure you guys sub to the channel, like, and of course, ring that notification bell. Okay. How is S79 doing? So, one of the things I know I always told people in the beginning when I was covering, is to try and be as objective and unbiased in coverage. Because obviously, no matter what, right, anyone, it doesn't really matter who the creator is, right? Even if you're just someone who's recruiting for your server, you want to try and always cast your server in a good light, right? Because you want it to be appealing to players, to groups that are looking to migrate out of their servers and hopefully, right, get as much of that traffic into yours. With that being said, right, I'm going to kind of go over some things, and I want to be very clear because these are things that every server, every kingdom is going to face, mine included, meaning that you can face up to these things. And, right, no one is devoid of perfection. Right? It's not as though everyone's going to be able to get that, and not everyone may get that. But what I will say is that I am happy, and I can say that wholeheartedly, with where S79 is. That's something I was never able to say about S6 when we were there as one alliance, not really as a group. S8 more specifically, because we did come in as a group and kind of built the foundation there outside of kind of where it's gone now. And even S6, we made attempts. For some people that may not know, when we went into S6 during the beta server phase, we came in as alliance. We reached out to all the alliances. We tried to get everyone, into a group chat, DM for the leads, but it was just nobody really wanted to conversate. Nobody really wanted to. There were some conversations that happened, but nothing really came out of it as far as, hey, this is the direction we'd all like to go in. Yeah, we want to work together. It was really kind of more isolated, which is very common for what you find in servers that don't have groups that come in. When everyone is kind of their own lead and they're all separated as an individual alliance, it does make it more challenging to try and find those common grounds. And then when we went into 36, we knew that there was a group that was coming in. We didn't really know the size, but we knew there was a group of some players that were coming in, and they just basically wanted to try their hardest to make I don't know if I'd say try their hardest, but they wanted to, their goal was basically to see the server fail, and then buy part of that, right, my project. And, so I when I look at where 79 is now, after 3 projects in, I can definitely say that even though it may not be the creme de la creme of where my standards are at, the foundation, I think, is very solid still. And I think there's a lot of upside, right, depending on where things go. With all of that being said, right, let me kind of give you guys an overview on, where we're at right now. So, and I want to really kind of stress this, right? We've done maybe 5. I mean, I really want to say about 5 to me. I can't even say 10%. I want to say about 5 to 6% of the level of recruiting that we would really have liked to have already done if it wasn't for some things that had transpired that we basically decided to have some deep conversations about and come out what I feel now is better ahead. But even with that 5 to 6% recruiting, we've been contacted by about 5 groups so far. There's about almost 35 individual players, kind of ranging from 200K to about 1.5 mil, that have shown interest in wanting to come, as far as just about 35 players that have filled out migration applications. Over the past couple days, we've been talking with a couple groups varying in sizes, anywhere between 10 to 15 players up to potentially 80 to 90 players. So it's been really awesome to see kind of this spark of interest that has been happening over the past week, really. And that is exciting to me because I think recruiting is by far one of the most challenging endeavors that your server is going to have to do You essentially have to, not to say you have to be a good salesperson, because you do have to sell, but you also just have to be honest and transparent with people. I think when you're out there and you're recruiting, it's very important that you are confident in what you're selling, and you're being honest, right? Because if you mislead people, if you tell people it's one thing, they get to the server and it's not, that's how you can have problems. So it's very important, I think if I was to kind of sum up one word that would define recruiting people to your server, that every recruiter should do, is be transparent. Right, as much as possible. It doesn't mean that you gotta get in there and tell people private conversations from some players that are, that maybe, say toxic things or say questionable things that are happening on the server from some isolated incidents. But be as transparent as you can when it comes to big picture on how the server is developing. And and a good example is kind of what we had happening over the past week, which kind of factored into the couple day stint for me releasing another video. Is that we had some of our big players that were essentially just kind of making questionable choices at the time, right? To kind of broadly put it. And I one of the things you always hear me talk about is communication. Right, having a conversation with people, right, before we make an impulsive decision, before we make a choice that might be coming from more of an emotional state, is sit down and talk with people. A great example, extending off of the broad example I just provided, is we had a player in our server, and I'll give you an example, right? So this is Fubar, right, our number one player. Fubar, right, at the moment had essentially kind of made some decisions and choices at the time that to us, looking at it from the outside, right, were questionable. And there wasn't really any communication at that point, and this is coming from someone who is a fantastic beacon for the server. They have only ever been in support of the family, of the server, the goals that we have, as a project overall. They were with us, or he was with us in our Jump project, along with many of the other top players as well from the top 100. And just this isolated incident came about where there just wasn't any communication. We didn't really know what was happening, and it really wasn't big in scope. But it was just off-putting because it just was very uncharacteristic. And so a couple of days go on, and we're kind of speaking through other people that are reaching out to him and a few others. And then the big thing that I always just stress is let's talk about it. Let's have a discussion, right? Let's have a conversation, because I think talking and voicing can sometimes be a lot more, not only hopefully therapeutic, but just a lot more efficient than just relying on text, right? It's hard to kind of tell tone, emotion, really get a good sense of where that person is coming from when you can hear their voice. And so eventually, and this is more to the point, thankfully, right, Fubar came on, and we ended up having a management meeting, and then we ended up having a town hall, and he came on and talked to us, and more importantly, him and I were able to conversate, and I was able to kind of go over some things, and he had presented some topics, and at the end of the day, we were able to progress, right? He felt a lot better about it. We all felt a lot better about it. And we were able to kind of further get on the same page while more importantly answering questions that he had and giving answers and explanations that now made him feel a lot better about the situation. And that I think is a big thing that almost any server in any kingdom can relate to, whether it be with a few people, with your top players, with other alliances. Proactively communicating is extremely important, and that is how you're going to be able, right? And this is something that I'll say on a more broad general sense, is that bear in mind, right, when you have new players coming into a game, you have no idea where their knowledge is, how much knowledge they have, how much experience they have. And if they're coming in as brand new players to Kingdom Builders, and let's say the server they're playing in is the very first server, the very first Kingdom Builder they've ever played, or if it is, or if they're just kind of new and young to Kingdom Builders, they may not have as much knowledge and experience as someone else. So they're very easily moldable, right? Think of it, think of like you're filling a glass of water up, and every ounce that you fill up in this glass is knowledge and experience. And essentially, right, the first people that they listen to, whether it's in their server, if they go and listen to content creators, right, however they are, they're always kind of gathering knowledge and experience, depending on, of course, how many questions they ask as well. And that glass of water, right, is you're just pouring in more water, right? And so depending on who they're getting kind of coaching or help from, right, is also going to shape their perspective on how they view certain things in the game. And I'm sure some of you have heard, if you ever watched like an action movie, right, or a war movies, in some lines you'll hear the instructor say, well, it's going to be hard to kind of unlearn those bad habits, right? But like if they're coming from one branch of the military and going into another, right, in these movies, right, I'm sure some of you have heard these lines before where it's like, oh, well, we're going to have to untrain or reteach you these things, right, to kind of unlearn these bad habits that you've developed or poor habits, right? And I kind of look at it like that, where it's not necessarily as though the people that are advising them have ill or bad intentions. It's not to say that. But what it is to say is that because not everyone has a high level or an expanded level of knowledge and experience when it comes to a lot of different areas, their own experience on what they're advising or what they're teaching or informing said players on can also be at times detrimental to those players, right? If they're, unless they're just stating an obvious fact, right? Like the higher your troop power, right, the stronger you'll be, right? Like that's a fact. But if you come out and you're like, well, water's the best element, no one else is going to beat it, right? That is you giving a biased opinion, right? And that's not backed up by any amount of data. And so, like, again, that's the difference essentially between what you're finding out with new players, and that's kind of something that we have happening with a few players in 79. But again, it's not anything that is like I'm saying detrimental to kind of overall growth. And this is something that all servers and all kingdoms are going to face. And the big thing for me is just trying to give good information, right? For anyone that hears me talk, if you ever come into our town hall meetings that we do on a weekly basis, one of the biggest things you'll also hear me say is, right, it's not really about kind of who's right and who's wrong. What it's really about is giving players and making sure that they have the appropriate and the necessary amount of information so they can make an informed decision. And a lot of times that's exactly where I come from, right? It's me just giving you more information than you had before you joined the conversation, right? Or before you go out and make a decision that you think is right. But once you're given more information, now you may think it's not right. Or now you may question it a little bit more. Or now we're really getting into a fantastic conversation where there's more questions being asked and, just players are just learning more. And that's always the approach that I love to take. And I hope that a lot of players appreciate that too as well. Outside of that, again, getting into a little side tangent there, now kind of getting back on to 79 as a whole. Like I said, a lot of players and from so far a good amount of groups are interested in coming over. It's an exciting time. Migration is going to be opening on October 31st for a mil or less. Again, we will be accepting players that are a mil above, and we do ask that anyone who is interested in coming to 79 does apply. And again, we'll have some migration application information in the pinned comment along within the description of this video. And if there's a player, if you're a small group, a big group, a full alliance, multiple alliance, we have space for you. If you want to come and talk, we do migration information meetings. We've already had, I think, 2 or 3 this week with small groups and large groups as well, whether it's kind of speaking to their leadership or even setting up follow-up meetings where we kind of speak to their group and then their players have an opportunity to ask questions. I think those are very important, right? Because it allows for people to kind of have their, any of their fears or their concerns or their precautions, really hopefully quelled. By being able to ask those questions and kind of get more information so they can feel more confident in their decisions. But feel free, you can contact me. I'm the main migration rep for 79, so if anyone has any questions, if you want to look to set up a meeting, whether it's on voice, feel free. You can reach out to me on Discord. I'll also have that in the pinned comment along with the description. And yeah, man, it's an exciting time. I'm really happy with where it's going. I think when you get more activity coming in, it's always a boost to morale. It's a boost to motivation. And a lot of players are going to start seeing that, there's a lot of people that want to come into 79 because we're one of the very few servers that have, if not probably arguably the only server, that has prepped to the level that we have specifically for the upcoming server versus server game mode. And this is something that I've been preaching since beta, right? And it's interesting because, you'll have people that will say, well, why are we going to prepare a server for something that hasn't come out yet? My question to them is, and this is a great line, this is from... oh God, I can't even think of the darn name now. But it's from that AVP movie, like the one where Prometheus. I think it's called Prometheus. And I remember there was this scene where they were in like this ritual chamber, and it was either a guy or a girl, but they looked at the girl who had a gun, and they asked them, why, essentially paraphrasing, why do you need the gun? And they said, I'd rather have a gun and not need one than need a gun and not have one. And I thought that was a very interesting line that kind of translates to the situation that our server kind of looks at when it comes to long-term goals, is that I would rather prepare for SVS even if it doesn't come out, because I know that by preparing for SVS, it's going to put our server in a better state to last longer and have a higher chance of doing it, rather than, right, SVS coming out and us not preparing for it. So, again, looking at it like that, may change some people's perspectives, especially when new servers come out and you look, because that's always been a big thing that I've heard, is that, it's not out yet. Why are we preparing for something that doesn't exist? Why are we doing this if we're basically going to stop playing after COR3 because there's not really any like new content, whatever it may be. Again, I would just say, to me, that just sounds like limited perspectives, right? Just looking at really what's important, and you can build something that's going to last longer than 3 months in a server, right? A lot of it comes down just to how you prep your server, how you prep your players, informing them, educating them, right? Giving them goals, attainable goals at that can supersede, right, when COR3 ends. And I'll probably make a separate video on that later. But anyways, hopefully everyone enjoyed a little bit longer today because I was trying to play catch up, give everyone an S79 update along with kind of some migration information, and then a few kind of random server managing points. As always, I hope everyone appreciates. And of course, let me know what you guys think in those comments down below. Again, it can be on anything I talked about. I would love to hear from you as always. That is it for your boy BN. I am out. We will catch y'all next time.